All right, it's nice to see everybody. It's nice to be back. Why don't you stand up to your feet just real quick? I'm going to pray a blessing over you before we get into the word this morning. I believe there's going to be a significant shift in your life. I believe that the word of God is spirit breathed. So you can get a Logos word, which is black and white paper, and it's just a group of principles. But if the Rhema word of God speaks into your life, it becomes alive. And so how you make it alive is coming into alignment and agreement with what God has said about you. So why don't you close your eyes real quick? And if you believe in God for a breakthrough, if you believe in God for an inheritance on another level, if you're believing God for a spiritual healing, a physical healing, an emotional healing, you're believing God for prosperity, come on, let's get into agreement. Father, right now, we believe that we are sons and daughters in the kingdom. We believe, God, that you have spoken into our identity and that we are no longer slaves or servants, but we are sons and daughters. And from that place, we receive an inheritance, access as kings and priests to bringing heaven to earth in every area of our life. I bless every family that is connected to Breakthrough, that they may see a breakthrough in every area. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen and amen. Come on, take your seats. You know, I've been speaking around in different churches and consulting different movements and churches for over 5 years. I've been pastoring for over 10. So I learned a little trick is that for you to really like me, we're going to finish church a little earlier than normal. This is what I just know. People like guests that finish church before it really is meant to finish. So you can go and get your food and stuff. So what I want to do is just really quickly take you on a journey. And what we're going to do is this. I truly believe, and I've been on the journey with Breakthrough now for years, so I have a little bit more license to speak into the DNA of the church, not just the outworking of the church, but the DNA of it. And I truly believe you're more than a church. Breakthrough, like, you know, we've got Springfield and Northside and, all the other breakthroughs, but Breakthrough, I think, is really the defining factor for you. Where your region is just contextual. Breakthrough is a spirit. Breakthrough is identity. And so I want to speak into the whole idea of inheritance this morning, because there is a word from heaven for you, for this community, that when you dig into what your inheritance really looks like, what you realize is that, have you ever worked for something and then realized it was going to be given to you anyway? And you're like, yeah, but I did all the work. And then the person was like, but I was giving that to you anyway. Why were you working? It's like the elder brother mad that the younger brother got the party when he had access to the party the whole time, but he was trying to work for the party and the father was always going to give it. And I want us to move that posture, if that's okay. And I believe that this morning is going to be that shift for you. I've loved the fact that you're talking so openly about finances. I've got two focuses this whole year, and I believe they are two things that are going to shift and accelerate people's lives. Number one, I'm going to war with the spirit of poverty. I am. I'm literally going to war with the spirit of poverty. And the poverty mentality is this, is I'm a slave and therefore I hoard because I'm worried about will God provide for me tomorrow. So we're going to kill hoarding and we're going to kill a slave mentality. We're going to kill greed. And so that has been one of my passions, as Pastor Tina said before. We did talk about it at a Breakthrough Nation level across all the campuses. We also did it at a men's conference. It has been my most requested seminar for the last 3 years, is Doing Money God's Way. And here's why, is I went and studied with a Messianic rabbi who taught me how to do money God's way. He sat down and showed me how the Jews did their finances, and the banking system starts with the Jewish model. It was also why the smallest percentage group of people are also the wealthiest, is they understand the pattern of God. It's not a formula, it's a pattern. And so I sat with them, then I sat with bank managers and financial planners, and just recently I sat with one of the wealthiest people on the Gold Coast. He's one of the biggest shipping manufacturers, and he's been taking this marketplace message out for especially business people to be like, do money God's way and watch the prosperity come in. And so we've just been sitting around and talking. And so a few weeks ago, a production company came to me and said, we want to produce this seminar for you. And a whole series. It's in HD. It's like not pixely. It's all HD. The main director, the camera guy, he was so funny. I was thinking of Simi when he was filming, because I was thinking Simi would have a field day here. He was on one of those hoverboards. You know those hoverboards that go forward? He's standing on a hoverboard with a rig connected to his shoulders and the camera out here and everything swiveling, and he's just chilled on his hoverboard as he just moves through the auditorium filming. I'm like, you look like RoboCop. With that said, I feel like we need to go to war with poverty. We need to go to war with it. And the other thing that I'm going to speak and focus into the whole year is the convergence of king and priest, the convergence of a full identity of marketplace and ministry. And so I wanted to bring something to you simply because we've gone on some of the journey before. And as Kizzy was saying before, and Pastor Tina, there is a pattern to giving. And so because they filmed it, I'm doing as a gift as such, a pre-order of the brand new resource called Faith and Finance. This is the seminar that's been most requested. And so it is going to be email delivery on March 25th, but it's coming to you as a resource. If you sign up for it off the back, it's only $50 for the pre-order. Can I just tell you this now? Even if you've got to go halves with your sister or brother or something, sow into your life. This will be a resource that attracts far more money than $50. And as soon as it's released, it'll go to $150, because that's how much it's, actually that's not even how much it's worth, because it's worth a lot more based on the research and the development of the whole series. So can I just encourage you, go and make an investment on your life at the end of this service. There's just sign-ups over there. You'll get it directly emailed to you. And if you eat this, if you ingest this revelation, you will be aligning yourself with God's pattern from Genesis on how to bring wealth and health and prosperity holistically to your whole life. Because it's not about you giving God money, it's about Him giving you His. Okay, so right at the back of the admin table over there, you can sign up, you can pay via FPOS, all those things. But I wanted to bring it to you as a pre-order, because once it's out, we're not doing pre-orders anymore. Okay, all good? Okay. Okay, I have lost my keys so many times, it's unbelievable. I actually have one of those tile things now on my keys. I have an app on my phone, and now I can find my keys. I just have to hit the tile and the Bluetooth, and then it'll make this little song, and I can find it through my house. Anyway, I had lost my keys once, and I was running late. Who's ever lost something just before they were meant to leave the house? And you get even more stressed, like you go into this rage mode, and like everybody annoys you straight away. It's like, don't talk to me, I'm late, I'm already stressed out. And you start moving things, but not nicely moving things. You start throwing stuff off desks and stuff. And I remember I didn't have the tile on at the time, and I remember looking for this set of keys, and I was running late, and I wasn't originally running late, but now that I lost my keys, I was running late, and I'm running through the house like a mad person, until I realized, where was I last? Like, where was the last point that I went where I had everything? Because I'm one of those dumpers when I get home, meaning I take my watch off, my phone out, my wallet, everything just goes into a place. And I couldn't find anything. And then I realized, hold on a minute, I think I was in the study. And so I went to the study, and my study is not one of those studies that looks nice. My study, when people, prepare messages and stuff, and you see them on Instagram, and they put their short macchiato just at the right angle, and their Bible just on the side a little bit, and with their notes neatly handwritten, and then they just put there, and it's like preparing my sermon for the weekend. I'm like, that's not preparing a weekend sermon. It's too neat. Like, you got to get messy with it sometimes. And so my study's a mess. Just is. I'm okay with that, because I get good stuff out of it. And so I leave it, right? Anyway, I eventually find my keys under the pile of stuff. And as I'm driving there to the meeting I was speaking at, I felt the Holy Spirit's nudge. And He said, just because you lost them didn't mean they weren't yours. Let me put it this way. Just because I couldn't see where my keys were didn't mean someone else had taken them. Just because I couldn't see what was mine didn't make me lose what was mine for the long game. It meant I couldn't see it, but it was still in my house. Now, let's take it a level deeper. Just because you can't see the call of God on your life outworked yet, just because you can't see the fullness of your inheritance outworked yet, just because it looks like it's covered by some mess, doesn't mean it's not yours. It doesn't mean the devil took it. It doesn't mean that the person that betrayed you took it. There is something that people cannot take from you. And I can tell you, it is the call of God on your life. No one. They can take your money, they can take your cars, they can break your heart, they can do lots of things. But they can never take the prophetic call of God on your life. And that is the key. That's the key. You know, it's funny because we have these big vehicles that are started by these little things. Like, you think about it. I lost my keys the other day because the battery had died in my tile. I'm freaking out. And I got so frustrated, and I had this epiphany. God speaks to me in the midst of frustration. That I can have my vehicle, this big thing that is lots of bells and whistles, gets me to A to B, and it can be sitting in my garage, and yet I cannot move the big thing without the little thing. I can't even start it. And so the key here is, number one, the call of God on your life, even if it's under mess, is still yours. You just got to find it. You got to be willing to get into the mess and find it and fight for it. And refuse to go, well, I can't find my keys. I'm not meant to be going from A to B. And then realize this, we sometimes love the car or the vehicle, but we're not willing to find the key. It's like, I'm meant to be a business person. I'm meant to be an entrepreneur. I'm meant to be a singer, a recording artist, a media mogul, all these things. And we look at the big vehicle and we're like, yeah, but don't worry about the key. We need the key. We need you to fight for the key. God's already got the vehicle and he gave you the keys. And if you lost the keys, it's time to find the keys. Come on. It's time to find the keys. Why? Because no matter how big your destiny is, if you do not have the keys of the call of God that you have access to, you'll never start it. And then we end up with shoulda, woulda, couldas. Oh, but you should see the call of, I've seen the destiny that God's got for me, so what are you doing with it? I can't find the keys. Where is it? It's in a mess somewhere. I think it's time to fight through our mess. Time to find our keys. Some of the mess is insecurity. Some of it's rejection. Some of it's a whole bunch of stuff that happened. Sometimes it's not even our fault. It's circumstantial. But our keys are somewhere. So let's talk into your inheritance this morning. Because you might not be able to see it, but we're going to find it. Okay, here we're going to talk about digging wells. Let me give you a little bit of historical narrative around digging wells. Is they were considered a life source. I mean, you're talking about people in the desert. Finding a well is a life source. It's worth more than $1 million if you need water. And so these people would go from town to town and they would base their trip on where the wells were. It's like how we now base our whole movements on where the coffee shops are. There's an actual app called Bean Hunter. And whenever I travel, that's one of the first apps I'm looking at is where are the coffee shops, because they all have ratings and stuff. I'm looking at where are my watering holes. It was a place of community gathering and reconciliation. So the way that wells worked in order to protect them is usually they would cover them with these big rocks or big stones or big coverings. And therefore, if you wanted to access the well, you couldn't do it yourself. You couldn't access the well by just turning up and going, well, I'm going to go get my stuff, and I move it. It was too heavy. So it meant that your town, if you had a fight with somebody in your town and you guys were there at the same time, you had to put aside your differences for the greater good. Everyone had to get together and they had to move the covering and work as a team in order to access life, the well, sustenance, healing. They had to work together. That's why the woman at the well in the story with Jesus is she was sitting there by herself when no one else was there because she didn't want anyone else to see her, but she couldn't get it all by herself. So Jesus turns up and gives her a narrative of what real water looks like, right? So, emotional connections and landmarks. You know that it took generations to dig wells. Like they didn't have the earth moving equipment that we have. They didn't just, hey, can you just bring the digger? I mean, can you imagine trying to find that well and then you've got teams of people, generations. It's like the cathedrals that we see now in Europe, is they were built over hundreds of years. The people that started it might have never seen the end of it. But they were smart enough to know and intuitive enough to know that if I start now, then at least my grandchildren are going to access what I'm digging. And so another reason for a well was it was an altar to honor the person that dug it. Again, the woman at the well says this well was built by my father Jacob. Now, Jacob was a patriarch hundreds of years before her. But it was still an honor to say this is the person that sacrificed to build this well. I'm going to put it this way. There is always a sacrifice connected to a well that another generation drinks from. The reason, and I was watching Pastor David as he was ministering in the Spirit. Even myself, I'm like, I'm lost. I just want Holy Spirit do a work in me. You know, that comes from sacrifice. We have access to that in this environment because somewhere, and most likely somewhere that you didn't see him publicly do it, he went into the secret place and dug a well that you would have access to. This is why honor in the next generation is so important. Because if we can't honor the man of God that dug the well, we shouldn't have access to the water. Because we like to drink the water, but not even contribute to the man and the woman of God that dug the well. We're like, well, shouldn't it be free? And so I want to create an ecosystem this morning that is not built on a fixed pie model in our head that if I give, I now don't have. No, if I give, I'm contributing to a greater ecosystem that in the long run gives back to me anyway. It gives back to me anyway. And in essence, it gives more back to me. Because I know for a fact that in that moment, you probably saved, some people in here saved like $500 worth of counseling. Maybe $1,200. Maybe $2,000 course because God just gave you a download. When you get into the well, a lot of the things that we normally pay for or buy or sacrifice for there is done. But you got to know how to access the well. There's a well here in Breakthrough. You got to know the well. So in Genesis 26, the story of Isaac and Abimelech. And Isaac is the son of Abraham. And his father has dug wells. And he's now about to go on the journey of what it looks like to be next generation accessing the wells. In Genesis 26, this is what it says. There was a famine in the land besides the first famine that was in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went to Abimelech, king of the Philistines in Gerar. Then the Lord appeared to him and said, do not go down to Egypt, live in the land of which I shall tell you. This is so interesting because in Egypt, they had the land, they had the water, and they had no famine. Now, there was a famine in the land. Have you ever felt like there is emptiness around your life and there is an easy solution just over there? Like, I got a problem, I'm just going to go over there and fix it. And in the midst of going for the easy fix, the Band-Aid over the bullet hole, God says, don't. And you're like, yeah, but they have water over there. when NASA launches a rocket to the moon is over here, and they launch the rocket that way. Now, if I was an astronaut, I'd be like, nah, let's go that way, because that's where the moon is. But the scientists know this, that based on orbit, when you launch the rocket from here going this way, the opposite of where you think you should go, God designed it that the moon meets the rocket, not the other way around. In essence, we would fight and be like, this is my calling. This is the gift of God on my life. This is what my destiny looks like. This is what my vehicle looks like. And I'm going this way. And God says, no, I've got you to go this way. And you're like, no, but my vehicle, it's in the garage. It's so fancy with lots of bells and whistles. I'm going to be Insta famous. And I'm going this way. And we're going, no. And God goes, no, go this way. Don't be Insta famous. Serve where no one can see you. And you're like, yeah, but please, I've got a hashtag. Going this way. God says, no, go this way. Here's why. Because on the way to getting there where you think there's nothing, you'll find your keys. And when you find your keys, the vehicle meets you where God has always sent you. In essence, just let God bring the moon to you. Don't strive. Don't try to work it out in your own strength of I'm going to the moon and I know how to get there. God's like, I designed the moon. Let me bring it to you. So, Isaac wants to go to Egypt. And God says, don't. Go somewhere else. He's like, but the whole land's in famine. Dwell in the land that I tell you. I'm going that way. God says, go this way. And I can promise you this. I would rather have faith to go where God sends me, even if it looks like there's nothing there, than be in my own strength going this way and miss the very thing God had for me. He says, dwell in this land and I will be with you and bless you. For to you and your descendants, I give all these lands. Watch this. I will perform. I will bring the moon to you. I'll do the heavy lifting. Just be obedient. See, and that's what I love about the narrative of God in our life right here, right now, and throughout history, is be obedient and I'll perform it for you. You know, the most times when we're stressed out and we're living in our own strength is when we're not being obedient and we're trying to figure it out ourselves. So when God says be obedient and just listen, it's usually because he's cooking something in the kitchen that you can't see. And he's doing something for you that you can't see yet. But he'll bring it to you. He'll perform the oath, which I swore to Abraham your father, and I will make your descendants multiply as the stars of heaven. I will give to your descendants all these lands, and in your seed all the nations of the earth shall be blessed. Because Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. Almost saying to Isaac, God's like, your daddy listened, now listen to me. Your dad was obedient enough to be blessed, and he was the richest man in all of that history in that season. He said, if I blessed him because he listened, I'll bless you if you listen. God always reminds us of his promises when he gives us a directive. So when God says, I need you to go here, do this, speak here, pray for this person, believe me for this, have faith here, he never just says do it. He adds and reminds you of, remember that promise I made you? Remember that oath I made to your family? Remember the inheritance that I promised you would have access to? He always connects a directive to the promise. There's always, in every time. And on top of that, he connects it to your legacy. He'll connect every directive to a legacy and a promise. So when he says, go and do this, go and pray for this person. And you might say, well, I'm nervous to pray for sick people. Well, at some point, there'll be a promise that someone prayed for you at the front here. And they said, you're going to lay hands on the sick and you shall see them recover. And you'll be like, yeah, I want them to see them recover. I just don't want to lay hands on them. Like, I don't want to pray for people to be healed. I just want them healed. But see, that's the act of faith. There's a promise after a directive. So Isaac dwelt in Gerar, and the men of the place asked about his wife. And he said, she is my sister. For he was afraid to say, she is my wife, because he thought, lest the men of the place kill me for Rebekah, because she is beautiful to behold. Now here's the problem. Because can you imagine that dialogue between husband and wife? It's like, look, Rebekah, we need to have a conversation. I just want to say up front that you are so beautiful. You are so the hottest ever. I just love you so much. You're the most beautiful woman in the world to me. But I want to spare my own life. So can I tell everybody you're my sister? Like, I don't know if that came up with a slap or a boot or a sandal somewhere. Of like, how could you? You're scared to die because of me? Like, you're not willing to lay down your life for me kind of deal? But it also is a generational pattern. That when Abraham feared for his life, he said Sarah was his sister. Now, Isaac is in a land of blessing, ready to be blessed. And because fear takes over him, he lost his keys somewhere. He said, I don't want to be bold. I'm going to just do what daddy did. And say my wife's my sister. Because I don't want to die. I don't want to die for her. Isn't God kind? Like, now it came to pass when he had been there a long time that Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked through a window and saw, and there was Isaac showing endearment to Rebekah, his wife. Then Abimelech called Isaac and said, quite obviously she is your wife, so how could you say she is my sister? Isaac said to him, because I said, lest I die on account of her. Look, I'm really sorry. I just didn't want to die because of her. Whenever you are moving, I want you to see this. Whenever you are moving from one level of engagement with God to a greater level of inheritance, you are transitioning from one place to a greater place, a limited authority to a greater authority, from business model to bigger business model, from house to bigger house, from promise to greater promise, to whatever, to a growing family, whatever level of transition you're in. Here's what will happen. Your covenant relationships will be tested. Every time, without a doubt. And here's why. Because for God to have you at the place of authority, of leadership that you are called to, you have to be test proof. Your covenant relationships have to be test proof. When they test a submarine, they send it down to as far as the pressure test can go as soon as it starts to creak. See, we see the creaks that creak says, oh my goodness, we're breaking. No, it's just testing. And we see the creaks, and then they bring it back up and they make it whole. They either patch it up or they do some more engineering on it to make it test proof. Why? Because every covenant needs to have integrity. The word integrity comes from the mathematical word integer, which means this, whole. It means that when you step into the fullness of your inheritance, you can't go in there broken. God puts you through a season and space where everything you hold dear will be tested. And it's not nice. And there are moments in the middle of the night you can't sleep because you've got anxiety about what's happening. And you hold yourself and you're like, God, just get me through the night. Give me one word. Just give me one word. You know, and people that were born again yesterday will be like, you need to get into your word more. You praying? And you're like, I'm going to slap you in the face. I'm going to slap you on the face. Because I only have to get one rhema word from God. And that can sustain me for the whole day. And do I believe in reading it? Absolutely I do. But when you are undergoing transition and spiritual warfare, you don't need some upstart to come and say to you, you don't need 30 days of prayer. As I know, you don't understand, I'm fighting the devil. I'm fighting an enemy agenda against me and my whole legacy. God's with me. I'm a living epistle right now. So don't mess with me. Don't mess with me. You're getting in my Gatling gun range. So leave me alone. Because you need people that have been through the pressure test to encourage you in the test to get you through to the other side. You don't need people that, if you're carrying 100 kilograms of spiritual pressure, people that have only ever lifted 5 going, this is how I think you should do it. I'm serious. If you ain't never dug a well, don't tell somebody else how to dig a well. So covenants, and here's the thing, all your covenant relationships will be tested because they need to be test proof for the next level of authority. See, you can lie about it, you can leave it open to other people, but whatever you're in covenant with will eventually reveal itself in the pressure test. You can lie about what you're in covenant with, good, bad, or ugly. Like anything, like you can be in covenant with hatred, you can be in covenant with love, you can be in covenant. There's a thing that Miles Monroe once talked about, the validity of a declaration. Says that when you speak out loud a spiritual agreement, that everything will test it. So that when you are really in covenant with something, you can lie about it, you can pretend, you can lose your keys, you can go, I actually don't want it, it's hurt me before, I don't want it. Eventually, someone will call the covenant out of you. And go, you're actually in covenant with, stop lying about it. Here's the covenant that you are in agreement with. You are in a covenant where Jesus is your identity. And you can play it down. You can lie to people about. People say, how come you're so blessed? Oh, I don't know. I'm just good at a few things. No, you're blessed because you're in covenant. You're blessed because you have a healthy body because you're in covenant. Your children are blessed because you're in covenant. And because the world sometimes doesn't understand, or our families or our friends don't understand it, have you ever downplayed a blessing just to settle for the status quo so you don't offend anybody? It's like, I live in a nice house, or I've got a new career and a promotion. Why'd you get it? Oh, I don't know. Maybe it wasn't that good. Like, it's not that much of a promotion. Like, I'm still like friends with them. Like, it's not that. Whoa, wait a minute. God just put his hand in your life and you are downplaying the blessing and lying about it, but eventually it's going to come out. Because whatever you're in covenant with is going to come out. And you're in covenant with a blessing, an identity, a purpose, a calling. So you can lie about it, but it's eventually going to come out. And Abimelech said, what is this you have done to us? One of the people might soon have lain with your wife, and you would have brought guilt on us. So Abimelech charged all his people, saying, he who touches this man or his wife shall surely be put to death. Whenever you touch somebody else's covenant, you end up killing your own. I remember being a guest speaker at this conference once, and there was another speaker there, and he wasn't a guest speaker, and in the sessions, he was just meant to give an announcement for something or give an encouragement at some level, and he ended up taking 40 minutes. He was given 5. He took 40. And I was the next person. And so I shortened a 40-minute session to 10 minutes. Now here's why. I honor the host's time. So he took 40, not me. I'll just take 10. I didn't go up there with my righteous stick and go, hey, you know what? All you guys missed lunch. I was given 40 minutes, I'm going to take my 40 minutes. I said, no, well, that's just part of the deal. I'll take 10. Now, here's the problem. This particular person wanted to have his moment when it wasn't his moment. And when you envy somebody else's covenant and their calling, you end up killing your own. See, what I did in that 10 minutes ended up getting me 7 speaking engagements and having him left looking like the guy that stole my time. So, here's a very, very easy principle. Never covet somebody else's covenant. Because if you do, you'll end up killing your own. If you steal or touch somebody else's or attain to, hey, that should be my calling. I'm going to take their time, or I'm going to take that business deal and it was never meant for you. Just like Abimelech said, it's a principle. Touch somebody else's covenant and I'll have to kill you. Don't look at other people's promises and saying, that should be me. Find your own car keys. Because I can take your keys and try to start my car and it won't work. Oh, but it's a key. Doesn't matter. It's uniquely designed for your vehicle, not mine. Let's stop trying to steal each other's keys. Because if you do steal somebody else's keys knowingly, you'll end up killing your own and your vehicle won't start. Then Isaac sowed in that land. Remember, this is the land, not Egypt. This is that land. And reaped in the same year 100-fold, and the Lord blessed him. The man began to prosper, this Isaac, and continued prospering until he became very prosperous. I think they're trying to make a point here. He prospered, continued prospering, and was very prosperous. But look at what he did. He sowed in that land. You can only be prosperous if you sow and eat seed according to its own kind. Do you know science and research says that if you volunteer your time, you live longer? Would you like to know why? Because you're sowing time. So you live longer. Time begets time. Just like talent begets talent. You sow your talent and it will increase. Thus, when you sow your finance, it increases. For he had possessions of flocks and possessions of herds and a great number of servants. So the Philistines envied him. Remember, this is a king. Like they've got a kingdom deal going on. And they're looking at this guy that's kind of just worked on some dry land. They're like, we have a kingdom, but we envy him. Where God calls you, if you live in the blessing, you stay true to your covenant that's test proof. You sow in the land that God has called you. Kingdoms will envy you. Governments will envy you. Your rich neighbors will envy you. See, a kingdom principle is whenever you covet someone else's covenant, you end up killing your own. Now the Philistines had stopped up all the wells which his father's servants had dug in the days of Abraham, his father, and they had filled them with earth. And Abimelech said to Isaac, go away from us, for you are much mightier than we. This is a guy that just went to a land because there was famine. Now they're so blessed that the king of the region says, you need to get away from us because you are becoming bigger and stronger than us. How is this happening? Then Isaac departed from there and pitched his tent in the valley of Gerar and dwelt there. And Isaac dug again the wells of water, which they had dug in the days of Abraham his death, for the Philistines had stopped them up after the death of Abraham. He called them by the names which his father had called them. But here's what's interesting is there's all these wells, and because the Philistines didn't understand the history, the honor, and the access of those wells, they filled them up with dirt. They filled them up with earth. Now let me give you a prophetic picture real quick. There's only two things that God curses in Genesis. The serpent and the ground, the earth. If you have access to a well, and there are people that do not understand that well, and I'm sure this is happening to people just sitting in this room, statistically it would have had to, that you've had access to a well, people have not understood the well you have access to, and they have cursed the well you were drinking from. They've poured curses upon your place that you should be getting sustenance from, and now you can't access it anymore. All because they didn't understand it. They were ignorant to the blessing. They didn't get it. Just because we don't understand the substance doesn't mean we have to curse it. So you might think here, I don't understand giving. Well, don't curse it. Test it. Oh, I don't understand healing and these prayer lines that they do in this speaking in tongues thing. What is that? What is that? Hey, before you curse it and stop up the well, try to understand the substance first. Because if the substance is bringing life, don't curse it. You might not understand it, but don't curse it. Don't curse the source because you don't understand the substance. There will be things that happen in breakthrough globally that you might not fully understand. Some outworkings of the spirituality of a community like this that you might not fully understand. And I get it. There are still things in my spiritual journey that I don't fully understand. But I'm very, very careful to curse something that's bringing life. Because I might not understand why that person fell on the floor. But if they got healed while on the floor, I'm going to bless it. Let them drink from that well. I might not understand it, but I'm not going to curse the substance because I don't understand the source. So Isaac's servants dug in the valley and found a well of running water there. But the herdsmen of Gerar quarreled with Isaac's herdsmen, saying, the water is ours. So he removed the curse, and now the very people that stopped it up were like, can I have access to that again? Have you ever worked for something and someone else taken the credit? And you're like, that's not fair. That's not fair. I prayed for that. I did that homework assignment as a group, and now everyone else is taking credit for it. It's kind of annoying that at work you might do this great project, have this great idea, and somebody else takes the credit. That's exactly what's happening here. So the water is ours. So he called the name of the well Esek, which means contention, because they quarreled with him. Then they dug another well, and they quarreled over that one also. So he called his name Sitnah, which meant strife. And he moved from there and dug another well, and they did not quarrel over it. Hey, let me put it this way. Isaac knew how to pick his battles. And if you've unlocked a well here, and all that happens is strife and contention, walk away. And here's why. God's got another well for you. He's got another well for you. You don't need to worry. Let him have the credit. Pick your battles. Because when that credit is tested at the next board meeting, they didn't come up with that idea, so where are they going to get it from? Pick your battles and walk away when you know you are blessed. There is no point camping around a well of contention. No point camping around a well of strife. Just walk away and dig another one, and then let God bless you with what's there. For now the Lord has made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land. There he went up from there to Beersheba, and the Lord appeared to him the same night and said, I am the God of your father Abraham. Do not fear, for I am with you. When you have a well that God has showed you where to take from, drink from, sustain yourself from, you do not need to fear what he has for you. When you fall in love with the substance, you are blinded to the source. Now, the substance is wonderful, but the source is greater. So if Isaac had camped around the substance for too long and fought and had contention for the substance, he would have missed the point of the source. So when we look in our lives, in the narrative, in the journey that God's taking us on, if we're fighting for something that's inferior to our design, let him have it. Let's not have contention and strife. It's not worth it. Find a well where there is peace and joy and love and hope overflowing. So let me bring this to a close. I will bless you and multiply your descendants for my servant Abraham's sake. So he built an altar there and called on the name of the Lord. And he pitched his tent there. And there Isaac's servants dug a well. Then Abimelech came to him from Gerar with that other guy, one of his friends, and that other guy, the commander of his army. And Isaac said to them, why have you come to me since you hate me? Watch this. And have sent me away from you. But they said, we have certainly seen that the Lord is with you. You hate me, but now you're meeting with me. What's up with this? It kind of feels like people that are against the church and Christian values in Australia coming to you going, look, we don't like you, but we can see that something's with you. And you're blessed. And you're doing things that no one else can explain. So can we make a deal? Like, can we make a deal? That you're not going to call down fire or something? And it's exactly what They were blessed. They were so blessed that they were bigger and stronger than the kingdom they were next door to, that he sent them away, and everywhere they went, they were even blessed still. So Abimelech goes and freaks out and says, man, we better make a promise that they're not going to just destroy us. So we said, let there now be an oath between us, between you and us, and let us make a covenant with you, that you will do us no harm, since we have not touched you and since we have done nothing to you but good and have sent you away in peace. You are now the blessed of the Lord. It came to pass, they swore an oath, and then it came to pass the same day that Isaac's servants came and told him about the well which they had dug, and said to him, we have found water. The king decided to make an oath with a group of people that he did not like, because the Lord was with them. Why? Because they had found water when no one else could. See, royalty comes seeking you when you understand your inheritance. It comes to you. You're not fighting to be noticed. You're just digging wells, living in the fullness of your Father's blessing. Digging wells. Oh, there's a fight around a well. Don't worry. I go find another well, because everything I touch is blessed. And then royalty starts looking for you. Royalty that might have not liked you. Governments and organizations that might not have been favorable to you, but you're too blessed for them to ignore. That's the kind of life I want you to live. You're so blessed, no one can ignore you. So here's some final thoughts. Are you looking unto Egypt instead of where God is placing you? Don't look for the band-aid over the bullet hole scenario. Go where God says. Let the moon come to you. Are you wandering and not digging? Sometimes we wander, and we just got to speak into this right now, because we live in a society where we like to church hop. Like we go, oh, the worship was okay. We give it a Google review. It's like, it was okay. Here's my rating, 3.5 out of 5. And sometimes we wander too much. We need to dig deep. Dig a well. Build. Don't be scaffolding. Build. Play the long game. Whose wells are you going to dig or redig? There are many wells dug by the two of you. It's now time to redig them as another generation. And do you place your life in the hands of a substance or your source? I want you to live a blessed life. And I believe right now that there is a prophetic activation that you can have access to. But you've got to choose to have access to it. You've got to take those keys. Be willing to dig deep and find those keys and say, I'm going to find my well. I'm going to dig deep and I'm going to find that well. I'm going to make sure of my covenants and who I'm in covenant with. I'm not going to look unto Egypt, a quick fix for my problems. I'm going to go unto what has God said to do. I'm going to lean into my promises, and I'm going to be so blessed that I cannot be ignored.
Who can stand?